In a moment, I'm going to read from Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 9, but I'm only going to read that one verse. We're only going to examine one verse. So I'll put it on the screen, but if you brought your Bible and you want to turn there, please feel free to do so. Thus far, we have already established that no one is immune to the principle of the path. The principle of the path is always working in the background of your life and mine. It is not a computer program that can be disabled. No one can escape the principle of the path. The principle of the path doesn't care how much money you make or how successful you are, how good looking you are, or how many friends you have. The fact is, we're all engaged in the principle of the path. If you haven't been here in a while and you don't know the principle of the path, here it is. The principle of the path teaches that it is your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination. It is your direction in life, the path you choose, not your hopes, not even your goals, not your dreams, that determines your destination. 3 weeks ago, we launched a series of messages based upon a book written by Andy Stanley entitled The Principle of the Path. It is as relevant today as it's ever been, and the book's not really that old. On page 56 of chapter 5, Andy begins chapter 5 with these words: "The principle of the path is so obvious, I hesitated even writing about it." The principle of the path is something we all should get. We should all understand. It is so obvious that he hesitated even writing about it. Several weeks ago, when Tyler and I were in my office and we were cooking up this idea, I said those very same words to Tyler. I said, I don't know if I can get 7 messages out of this little book. I mean, how many ways can you say the same thing? How many different words can you use to try and communicate the same message? Everybody understands it. Any child can understand it because the principle of the path is not deep. It's not complicated. The fact is, you probably get it by now, and we're only on message number 4. I know I get it. So why don't we move on? Well, let me ask you a question. If it's so simple, then why do so many people around us wind up in destinations that they do not desire? If the path principle is so easy to understand, then why do so many smart people wind up in places in their marriage, with their finances, with their family, their relationships, their career path that they despise? We've already established that it's pretty easy for us to run down the path of least resistance. That's at least part of the reason we choose inappropriate paths. It's fun, so let's do it. I love her. I love him. It's desirable. It's interesting. We can save money. 0% financing. 2 weeks ago, we established this principle. We often choose paths that lead us to destinations we do not desire. Does that seem strange to anyone? I mean, we're all intelligent human beings. Why do we so often choose a path that leads us to a place we really don't want to be? The word is regret. Why do so many of us live with regret? You can call that ironic, you can call it unfair, you can call it strange, but I promise you it is true. You see, being fallible human beings means that from time to time, I'm going to miss the big picture. I'm going to be focused on my way, my path, my desire, and I'm going to miss what's really going on. That's part of being human and imperfect. Today, we're going to try and explain why this happens. But to do it, we need to begin with one simple question. Here it is. Why do smart people do dumb things? Have you ever wondered this? Why do smart people do dumb things? Why do intelligent people choose relational paths that eventually crush their spirit and break their heart? Why do intelligent people choose financial paths that eventually pour pressure on their marriage and trap them in a cage? I mean, you would assume that eventually smart, educated, intelligent people, eventually we'd wise up. We'd stop making decisions that lead us to regret. But you've done it. And I've done it. And we're not stupid, right? I have a college degree. I have a seminary title associated to my name. You people are kind enough to sit here every week and listen to what I have to say. We're not dumb. We're not idiots. So why do we do dumb stuff? Why do smart people do dumb things? Here's the answer. Because we're on a happiness quest, not a truth quest. The reason you and I choose paths and go in directions that lead us to places we really don't want to be is because we're on a happiness quest in this life, not a truth quest. See, when I wake up in the morning and my feet hit the floor, consciously or subconsciously, I can tell you what I'm not thinking. I'm not committed to discovering truth today. I'm committed to finding happiness today. Whether I know it or not, whether I'm willing to admit it or not, I'm not about truth. I'm about happiness. That's something that we all have in common. And it doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how young or old you are, because we never grow out of our craving, our desire for happiness. We don't make poor decisions because we lack insight, because we don't have all the information. The human race has never had more information at its disposal than it has right now. The fact is, I'm wired for happiness, not truth. Let me illustrate. How many of you love coffee? Can I see your hands? Look at all the hands. Yeah, love coffee, all right? Now, many of you will get in that long line at Dunkin' Donuts that stretches all the way down to Arby's to get your $5 latte in the morning. When I've driven past Starbucks, the line is always wrapped around the entire building for a $5 cup of coffee, and that's conservatively speaking, I might add. $5 coffee. What's that all about? Do you realize that if you skip coffee on the weekend, and I know you don't, that's more than $100 a month you spend on coffee, $5 at a time? Let me ask you a question. How can you justify that purchase in the world today? Do you realize that $100 a month could sponsor 2.5 compassion children living in a world where they barely have enough food to eat? Now stop, wait. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty about your coffee. Hear me, I'm not. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty about that $100 a month coffee bill that you pay. But you get my point, right? You buy coffee because coffee makes you happy. In fact, if you didn't buy coffee, people around you would tap you on the shoulder and say, "You don't look very happy." Here's one. Some of you love to shop. Maybe you're a shopaholic. Whether it's online or going to the mall or driving to Savannah, some people get in their car, drive all the way to Atlanta just to shop. Now stop and think about this. Why would you spend hard-earned cash on new clothing when your closet is full of clothes that are perfectly good? In fact, some of the clothes in your closet still have the tags on them because you're waiting for that special occasion to wear them. Some of you are shoe fanatics. I own 4 pairs of shoes. There's my wedding and funeral pair of shoes. They're big, heavy wingtips. They're my Sunday shoes, and there are 2 pair of tennis shoes. Why in the world would you spend more money on clothes to put in a closet, cram in a closet, when the clothes you have are perfectly fine? Answer, because buying new clothes makes you happy. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Hear me. Let me ask you a question. Don't raise your hand because I don't want to get anyone in trouble with the law. How many of you have, quote, accidentally dropped your cell phone or happened to lose your cell phone just so you can take advantage of a new promotion at Verizon or wherever on a upgraded phone with a better camera, more storage, and more features? How many of you spent a ridiculous amount of money on the newest, latest, greatest iPhone just because you had to have it? The fact is, a new iPhone makes you happy, does it not? You see, we're not on a truth quest. We're not interested in hearing about truth or, in these cases, math. We're on a happiness quest. That's why we usually decide based on today, not tomorrow. We talked about that last time. That's why when choosing a path, we usually decide based upon what will make me happy today, not the outcome or the consequence of tomorrow. And hear me when I say this. We literally chase happiness today, like the video illustrates. We chase after happiness today. Then we realize we're trapped. And we try and escape the decision we made yesterday because we don't like the outcome. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Nowhere in this book does it tell us you shouldn't want to be happy. Doesn't say that at all, at least not to my knowledge, and I've looked. Sometimes being happy and truth overlap. Sometimes happiness and prudence are the same thing. My wife, Amy, loves to exercise. Exercise makes her happy. When she gets on that treadmill, man, she goes for hours at a time. And I mean, she really goes after it. If I walk with Amy in the neighborhood, I can barely keep up with her. I certainly can't talk while we're doing it. And she never stops. But here's the problem. As happy as exercise makes my wife, chocolate and caramel and frosting and icing and sugar makes her even more happy. So Amy makes a good choice in the morning when she wakes up and decides to exercise. She chooses today something that makes her happy, that will benefit her tomorrow. But what if she woke up every morning and said, today I want to be happiest? Waking up every morning and choosing the happy path would not be a good thing. Most of us could all get our minds around that. Few of us would go to work if every morning we woke up and chose the happy path. You understand that reasoning, especially if you are a parent. Every parent I know wants their children to be happy. You want your kids to be happy. But you also know, because you're the parent, that you can't allow your child to choose happiness every time. A parent who teaches their teenager or their middle schooler to look down the road a little bit before they decide, instead of deciding right now based upon momentary happiness, is a good parent. That's why I've brought this verse to your mind every week. Proverbs 4:26. Solomon wrote, ponder the path of your feet. Think it over. Consider your direction. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Now follow me. Since we're on a happy quest and not a truth quest, and since we often decide based upon today's happiness with little thought for tomorrow's outcome, I have to remind you of something that hopefully has become obvious. Happiness is one fickle chick. Happiness can be fickle. Because what makes me happy today is not guaranteed to make me happy tomorrow. You ever experienced this? I guarantee you what makes you happy today did not come with a guarantee that it will make you happy tomorrow. When you sit down this month and you write that check for the credit card or you pay that bill online, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Because when you pay that payment on a credit card, you're paying for something that made you happy months ago or weeks ago. Something that you can't even remember what it was. That's the way the process works. You see, there was a moment in time where you stood at a fork in the path. And one road sign read, happy today. And the other road sign said, happy tomorrow. Happy now, happy later. And the clerk behind the counter, she helped you decide. Remember? She said, credit or debit. Or that little box, you put your card in there and two lights pop up. Ever notice this? Credit is always or almost always green. Green, go, good. Credit. Debit, pay now. That's always red. Happy now, happy later. Over the years, I've counseled many, many couples who thought at one time, you know what will make me happy if we could move in together? If we could just move in together, I'd be so happy. You stood at a fork in the road and one said happy now and one said happy later, and you chose happy now. Let's move in. But in one ear whispered your upbringing, and your upbringing said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. What do your folks think? But happy now whispered in the other ear, go for it. Maybe your folks won't find out. Be happy now. What happened? They moved in together, and then months later, after playing house for a while, maybe even years later, they woke up one day and realized, I'm not very happy anymore. We need to get married. 7 years after I performed the ceremony, they're not happy again. What's the problem? Happiness is fickle. That's the problem. What makes you happy today is not guaranteed to make you happy tomorrow. You need to write that down somewhere. So if that's true, why do we do it? Why do we so often favor happiness today at the expense of happiness tomorrow? Why would we ever sacrifice? I mean, we're all intelligent, mature adults. Why would we ever choose happy now at the expense of happy later? Why would we sacrifice prudence for happiness? Let's get started in this conversation. It begins with this. We get good at lying to ourselves. We listen to our hearts. We lie to ourselves. We do not tell ourselves the truth. Instead, we listen to our hearts. The heart wants what the heart wants. You ever heard that? Well, the heart wants what the heart wants. Why do we so often favor happiness today? Because we lie to ourselves. Now, when we speak about the heart, we generally think we're talking about emotion. I love Amy with all of my heart. You take that to mean, and this is how I mean it, that all of my emotion is directed toward her. My emotion is not divided. But when the Bible talks about heart, it's talking about the center of our will, the core of what we want. Big difference between those two, right? When the Bible talks about the heart, it's talking about the center of what I want, the core of my will. Popular culture will not give you this message this afternoon when you turn on the television. Popular culture tells you, go with your heart. If it's wrong, your heart will tell you. If it's right, your heart will know it. Watch any Hallmark movie, and believe me, I've watched plenty. And this is the message. The heart knows, the heart wants what it wants, and what the heart wants is always best. What kind of advice is that? You see, when your heart demands happiness now, your brain shifts gears. Your brain takes on a new role. It's no longer the job of your brain to ponder the path of your feet. No. When your heart takes over, when your will takes over, now your brain has a new role. Your brain's job is to create a list of all of the convincing reasons of why your heart is right. I have done this so many times when I wanted to buy a new car. My heart wants what it wants. And so my brain creates a spreadsheet of all the convincing reasons as to why it's the best thing to do right now. They support my choice. In chapter 5, Andy describes a buddy of his who traded SUVs. A very expensive SUV that was only 2 years old, he trades it in for a brand new one that cost even more. Andy asked his buddy, why would you do that? His buddy said, oh, the old one was eating us up on gas. We traded SUVs to get better fuel economy. Nobody trades SUVs to get better fuel economy. He should have said, I traded SUVs because my heart wanted the new one. Look at those wheels. Feel that interior. That's what he should have said, but he didn't. Advertisers know how this works. Advertisers play on your heart to sell you their products. Advertisers help your brain justify what your heart wants. 0% financing. When I see that on a sign, I want to go right now and buy it, whatever it is. 0% financing is like free money. Why wouldn't you buy a new car if it's free money? Here's my favorite. Save 15% on your purchase today, and today only, remember, when you open a new Lowe's card. So let's have a quick arithmetic lesson, church. I'm standing there about to spend $300, but if I open a credit card, I'll save 15% on my purchase. 15% of $300 is $45. I'm going to save $45 on my $300 purchase if I open a Lowe's credit card. Okay, that happens, and that's good for today. But what happens at the end of 3 or 4 months when you still have $300 remaining? And you've been paying 17% interest on your credit card. 17% of $300 is $51. And it doesn't just happen once. It happens month after month after month after month. One of the smartest things Amy and I ever did when we were young and early married and starting this church was we cut up our credit cards. We stood at a path across, a fork in the path. One said happy today and the other said happy tomorrow. And we chose happy tomorrow. Here's another one. No payments for 90 days. Do you know what that means, church? That means you're going to be happy for at least 90 days. One of my favorites is more affordable now than ever. Baby, we got to do it. They're never going to be cheaper than they are now. By the way, the reason I know all of this is because I'm the spender in our relationship. Amy is the saver. Andy said that he and his wife owned a piece of property, and they decided to build a house. Not just any house, but a big house. Their dream house. So they built a very big house. Not the biggest you've ever seen, but bigger than most. Well, people in the church started driving by and seeing the size of this house. And so they'd ask him, Andy, we saw a house, pretty big. He, like me, I've been in this position 1,000 times, started to feel a little self-conscious. He and his wife, Sandra, they got embarrassed when people would ask the question. So he started saying things like, well, we like to entertain a lot. Well, we have the kids from church over to our house a lot. We host a small group in our home on Sunday nights. Now, all of those statements are true. But he shouldn't have said that. He should have said, we built a big house because we wanted a very big house. Why is that so difficult for us? Look, this is pretty big. I hope you'll get this. My heart is rarely concerned with truth. The reason I've bought so many cars in my lifetime is because my heart doesn't care about truth. It doesn't care about math. My heart wants what it wants. Rarely is my heart ever concerned with truth as it relates to tomorrow. Typically, my heart, my will, what I want, it only cares about what I want today. What's going to make me happy today? In addition, according to the Bible, my heart can deceive me. Did you know that? That's why the message of popular culture is baloney. Because your heart can so often deceive you. In 600 BC, Jeremiah, who is one of your Old Testament major prophets, was God's spokesperson to King Jehoiakim, who was one of the evil kings in Israel, and Israel had many evil kings. Jehoiakim, like the kings who had come before him, was making alliances with Israel's enemies by marrying foreign women and making them his wives, hoping to establish peace. In the process of doing so, Jehoiakim began taking God's nation down the path of pagan ritual and worship practices. Israel began worshiping not simply the one true God, but these other false gods as well. And Jeremiah called him out on it. Jeremiah would stand in the street and he'd shout to the top of his lungs, "You're going to pay one day, Jehoiakim." Jeremiah finally laid down an ultimatum. He said, "King, if you don't turn from the path you're on, if you don't change direction, If you don't turn from your ways, God is going to destroy your kingdom and the people are going to suffer. Jeremiah said this so often and so many times that the people started to get afraid. The people were antsy. The king had had enough, so he threw Jeremiah in prison, eventually in isolation. And while Jeremiah is in that darkened, isolated dungeon, in 586 BC, Israel fell to the Babylonians. And from 586 BC and the Babylonian exile until 1948, Israel lost her national identity, and Jeremiah saw it coming. And he wasn't the only one. Jeremiah saw the path the king had chosen. And more importantly, Jeremiah knew where the path was headed. And in these dark days, this wise old prophet came to the following conclusion. It's Jeremiah 17, verse 9. The heart, remember, that's my will, that's what I want more than anything, is deceitful above all things. Now, this is news to some of you because you thought the secret in life was to make decisions consistent with your heart. Not according to Jeremiah. Your heart, like my heart, like Jeremiah's heart, like King Jehoiakim's heart, is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Let's unpack this for a moment. Jeremiah is saying that your heart isn't simply dishonest. Jeremiah is saying your heart can't be trusted. Your heart won't only lie to you, it'll lie to you so often that it will lead you astray. So as it turns out, we not only lie to ourselves, we can be deceived as well by our own hearts. And then he says, who can understand the human will? Who can understand the human heart? Have you ever done something, lived to regret it, looked back on it, and said these words, I don't understand why I did that? You ever said that? I don't understand what I was thinking. Jeremiah 17, verse 9. Your heart is deceitful above all things. It's beyond cure. Who could ever understand it? Now, if you're following me closely, here's what we've learned so far. Number one, we tend to lie to ourselves to justify what we want in our heart. Number two, we're deceived by those very wants. And number three, our brains defend the lies with excuses. You have to accept this if we're ever going to get beyond it. You have to accept these three conclusions if we're ever going to find a workaround to the problem of our hearts. Here it is, big statement. You cannot get where you want to go if you don't know where you are. I probably should have written that. You cannot get where you want to go if you're not willing to admit where you are. If I take you out into the woods, place you've never been before, and I drop you and I say, find your way out. You cannot reach your destination if you don't know your starting point. You cannot go where you want to go if you're not willing to admit where you are. Even if I hand you a cell phone and I say, call someone, and they can lead you out. They can't help you if you can't tell them where you are. When it comes to this, again, we lie to ourselves, we're deceived by our own wants, and then our brains work overtime with excuses. If you're not willing to accept that, you'll never find your way out. Because when I come to one of those forks in the road and I have to decide, happy today or happy tomorrow, if I don't understand what's happening, I'll never make it. You see, my heart can't be trusted. And the sooner I accept that, the better off I'm going to be. Enter the Word of God. The Bible reveals who I am. The Bible reveals where I'm going in my marriage, where I'm going financially. More importantly, the Bible reveals where that path will lead. Jesus said, I am the truth. And when you know that I'm the truth will set you free. You see, as long as you keep letting your heart decide, you're going to likely wind up somewhere you really don't want to go. But when truth decides, you're set free from self-deception. You see, once you understand where you are, once you realize that your heart can't be trusted, you ever get to know someone and realize, I just can't trust them? You see, once you know you can't trust someone, it makes it much easier to ignore their pitch, no matter how convincing it is. Once I know where I am, that my heart can't be trusted, I must let truth decide. Then I can live free of self-deception. And when that happens, now the brain switches gears again. Instead of trying to justify what my heart wants, you know what the brain does now? The brain starts helping me understand the real reason I want what I want. And that is huge. When I'm faced with a fork in the path, happy today, happy tomorrow, and my heart is crying out, go for happy today, go for happy today. Happy today is where it's at. My brain can engage once I've called my heart a deceiver and can help me understand why I really want what I want. At the end of chapter 5 in his book, Andy offers 3 powerful questions. I'm going to leave you with them today. When you stand at the fork of the road and you're about to move in together, you're about to borrow more money than you can afford on a car that a few years from now you're not going to want, ask yourself these 3 questions. Here's number 1. Why am I doing this really? Why am I doing this really? I think you'll find more often than not, if you've been awake this morning as I've spoken, the answer to that question is, I'm really doing this because I want to be happy today. Here's question 2. If someone in my circumstance came to me seeking advice, what would I tell them? I mean, if someone in my exact circumstance came to me and said, what do you think I should do? What would I tell them? You'd be surprised how often what we choose and what we would advise are 2 entirely different things. That's because your heart is a deceiver. And question number 3, in light of my past experience and my future hopes, what is the wise thing to do? See, Jeremiah hit the nail on the head. My heart can't be trusted. Now look, rather than be offended by that statement, because look, I'm not calling you a liar. Jeremiah's not calling you a liar. Jeremiah is calling your heart a deceiver. So rather than be offended by that statement, accept that you're just like the rest of us. I'm at the top of that list. The only way to liberate yourself from problematic decision making is to admit the real reasons for your choices. And your heart can't help you do that. Your brain can, in light of this. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the truth of your word. It has given us so much advice for so many areas in our lives, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you for the times that we've allowed truth to choose our path. Father, may we rededicate ourselves to this process today. All of these things we pray, Father, in the name of your risen Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. God bless you, Grace Community Church. Hope you make it a fantastic week. I will see you next time.